In 2009, John Jones and his family would explore Nutty Putty Caves the day before Thanksgiving. Unknown to any of them, this adventure would become a travesty reported all over the world. John would end up never leaving the cave. Nutty Putty Cave, located in Utah, was discovered in 1960 by Dale Green. Dale and his friends would find that the cave system was filled with clay-like substance and thought to name the cave Silly Putty Cave. However, in the end, he would call it Nutty Putty Cave. The cave itself was filled with narrow passages and was a popular spot for explorers. Due to the tight turns within the cave, many people would have to end up being rescued after getting stuck. With over 5,000 visitors per year, an effort was made to limit the amount of people allowed in the cave at a time. On November 24th of 2009, John, his brother, and 9 of their friends and family members would enter the cave at approximately 8 p.m. This event was meant to be a part of their Thanksgiving get-together. The family frequently explored caves as a hobby. John himself hadn't been cave exploring since he was a young child. He would discover that being in the caves was much different being 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Unfortunately, he would never leave. After around an hour, the group had made it to a section called the Big Slide, the largest part of the cave. John, Josh, and 2 friends decided to head off to a different section of the passages named the Birth Canal. The Birth Canal is a narrow, extremely challenging passageway. John decided he wanted to take this challenge head on. He eventually came across the entrance. With that, he was the first to squeeze through, wriggling forward while looking for the larger area on the other side. However, John couldn't see it yet. In fact, he couldn't turn around, nor could he wriggle back out. With nothing left to do, he continued on. Finally, he found a section which has been described as the size of the opening of a washing machine. Again, he continued on. The passageway made a sudden turn downward, which John followed. Unfortunately, this is where things went horribly wrong. John had crawled so far into this section that he could no longer continue. The part of the cave he was looking for wasn't there. John wasn't in the birth canal as previously thought. He was in another section of the cave. Sources state that this section of the cave is referred to as Ed's Push. This part of the cave leads to 4 passageways. However, Ed's Push is so narrow that no human has ever been able to fit through to chart them. By this time, he had realized his mistake and attempted to back out of the passage. Unfortunately, this was difficult due to him being upside down. John was in that position, 100 feet below the surface, 400 feet from the entrance. Eventually, he would be found by his brother Josh, who would then attempt to pull him out. However, John's body only moved a little more than an inch. Not only that, but as soon as Josh let go, John would fall deeper than he originally was. According to sources, John was stuck with one hand pinned underneath him and the other forced backward. His ankles and feet were free, but were of little use as gravity pushed him down. Josh would then return to the surface to get help. At around midnight, a rescue volunteer named Susan would arrive to the scene. This was 3 hours after John had gotten himself stuck. She reached John and tied a rope around his ankles. This rope ran to the cave entrance where several other people pulled, attempting to pull him free. However, even with this, the odd angle in which John was in made this impossible. Susan went to check on John, where she saw that his breathing was already becoming labored. She gave him a water bottle, which he squeezed, allowing droplets to run down to his mouth. A few more hours would pass until a rescue team would arrive. This team would spend time coming up with plans to rescue John, eventually settling on using a rope to pull him out. They would also attempt to drill through the rocks surrounding him. However, the rocks combined with the angle made this extremely difficult. Over an hour of this resulted in only a few inches of rock being drilled through. Due to John being upside down and his position, rescuers were unable to simply pull him out due to the angle causing his feet to be in the way. Ideas sprung from lubricating the cave walls to using explosives. Eventually, they began installing a pulley system by drilling directly into the cave walls. Now, despite the dozens of people attempting to rescue him, only one person was able to fit through the passageway at a time, which made things even more difficult. Furthermore, John had been in his upside-down position for 19 hours by this time. In an upside-down position, the heart needs to work twice as hard to fight against gravity and pump blood out of the brain. To make matters even worse, John was beginning to have frequent panic attacks. A two-way radio was brought down so he could communicate with his wife. Luckily, he wouldn't be in there much longer. Soon, relief would sweep over everyone as the rescue team finished installing their pulley system. Together, 8 men pulled him out inch by inch. However, they would stop frequently due to John experiencing an immense amount of pain. Regardless, he was eventually pulled up enough to where he could make eye contact with one of the rescuers. He was described as looking tired, having red eyes and a dirty face. The team continued pulling. Then everything went horribly wrong. One of the rescuers passed out for a second. After he opened his eyes, there was nothing but dust in the air. As it turned out, part of the cave wall had shattered, the part holding up the pulley system. One of the bolts had flown out and hit the rescuer in the skull, which is why he fell unconscious. This rescuer suffered severe injuries and had to be replaced with another. Even worse than this, John had fallen back into the narrow passage. This time, he was even deeper. His breathing became shallow and infrequent. Along with that, he made less and less communication with the rescue team. One of the rescuers crawled into the passage and attempted to tie the rope around John's waist. He too got himself stuck. Fortunately, he was able to wriggle himself free and soon began drilling a hole for a new pulley system. However, members of the team would soon notice that John was no longer breathing. A medical professional was eventually called who then pronounced him dead at midnight. Unfortunately, John's family would never be able to lay him to rest. It was determined to be too dangerous to remove his body from the cave. As such, Nutty Putty Cave was sealed off to the public. John's remains rest in the same spot to this day.